I never thought a single sentence could knock the air out of me, but that's exactly what it did. Delivered lazily, mockingly in front of the whole team, in front of neighboring departments, in front of the people whose approval I'd spent my entire career trying to earn. He just fixed my presentation. If you're so jealous. That was it. Sometimes the moment that splits your life in half doesn't look like a blow. Sometimes it looks like a smirk, like a comment everyone mistakes for a joke. Sometimes destruction doesn't start with thunder. It starts with quiet laughter. And if you asked me right now to remember the exact moment I realized there was no going back, it was that day, that air, that wooden deck of the company retreat creaking beneath my feet as I stood there, frozen, listening to people laugh as if that was their way of diffusing tension. They weren't laughing at me, they just didn't want to get involved. And I just stood there, trying to breathe. I'll be honest. If this story starts as a confession, let it be one. I've never been the kind of person who knows how to defend himself loudly. I'm not the one who raises his voice. I don't make scenes. I work, I keep the rhythm, I finish my tasks a week ahead. I'm the person who gets the, "Can you take one more look at the document tonight?" texts. The one who stays after 5, typing comments in the dark long after the janitor has started doing her rounds. And all that time, my manager, Kyle, was the guy who made a couple of edits, slapped his name first on the file, and collected the applause. For years, I thought that's just what adult life looked like. You swallow it and keep working. But the retreat was different. They brought us there to bond, to recover, to reset the team's energy. In reality, it was just another stage Kyle could shine on while pretending he was the engine behind our project. A forest lodge, big windows, coffee and thermoses, wooden walkways leading to the conference hall, and the presentation he was supposed to deliver the next morning. The presentation I had actually made, or rather, the one I made, and the one he decided to improve at midnight by breaking its entire structure. I noticed it at around 1 a.m., when we were already at the retreat. I went into the conference room to grab my notebook and saw his laptop screen glowing. He was sitting there, humming to himself, repainting slides, changing headers, slicing the cohesive document into pieces, and all of it without understanding the logic at all. Where there was supposed to be a smooth sequence, he dropped in 3 charts in a row. Where we needed an argument, he replaced the text with a joke. He even deleted one of the graphs entirely, not realizing it was the key element. I stood behind him watching what he was doing, feeling that familiar knot rising inside me, the mixture of fear and helplessness. Should I step in? Tell him he was destroying the work he himself had asked me to do? Demand he put everything back the way it was? If I had said anything, he'd just claim I was overreacting the next morning. He'd done that before. That's how he kept me, in his shadow. Kyle looked up, saw me, and said, "Just tweaking it. Don't worry, I'll look good tomorrow, and it'll be good for the team." He didn't even realize that this was an admission, not we. Tomorrow he would look good. 3 hours later, when he finally went to sleep, I came back, sat down at the laptop, opened the backup I thankfully made after every major block of work, and I started fixing everything he'd broken. It felt like clearing debris after a collapse. Every edit meant restoring the structure, re-explaining what he tried to remove, realigning the style, syncing colors, correcting numbers. I did the work quietly, carefully, with that mournful precision people use when repairing something that was broken behind their back. By 4 in the morning, the presentation once again looked like something you could show to upper management. I wasn't proud. It wasn't heroism. It was survival. Not for his presentation, but for my career, my reputation, my name, which he could sink in a single night. The morning smelled like coffee and pine. Everyone gathered on the wooden deck near the conference hall. Light shirts, badges, tired smiles pretending we were ready to work on a Saturday. Kyle stood in the center, waving his hands, telling some long story to the marketing group. He looked well-rested, too well-rested, and I knew why. He slept while I worked. When it was time for the presentation, he led the team inside like a director, showing the crew where the camera should stand. He turned on the projector, and when the first slide appeared, one of the execs said, "Clean, strong start." Kyle smiled, and for a split second I was happy, stupidly, childishly happy. I thought he might say, "Ethan helped me clean this up last night." Just half a second of hope. I didn't want a medal. I just needed to see fairness in one single sentence. Instead, he turned to the room, clapped his hands, and said the sentence that changed everything. "He just fixed my presentation. If you're so jealous, work harder." The laughter was short, thin, not cruel, just cold. People laughed not because it was funny, but because laughing was easier than watching someone fall face first. Kyle didn't even look at me. He was already savoring the attention, putting on a show, and I stood there like a background prop. The strange thing, I didn't feel rage, not even hurt. It was something slower, quieter, like a cabinet door closing somewhere deep inside me, leaving only emptiness behind. I realized two things at once. First, I would never again stay up all night saving his face. Second, what happened today was only the beginning. I thought the worst part would be the presentation itself, the moment Kyle stole the credit. But it turned out the aftermath was much uglier. Not loud, not dramatic, just that slow, steady erosion you only notice when the floor finally gives way. The retreat had this fake atmosphere of relaxation, beanbags in the lobby, soft indie music in the background, people pretending to be professionally vulnerable during team-building exercises. But underneath it all, I felt something change between me and the rest of the team. Not because they blamed me, because they didn't know where to look. Some avoided eye contact, unsure if they should say something. Others gave me that sympathetic half-smile people give when they want to help but don't want to get involved. And then there were the few who pretended they didn't hear anything at all. Cowardice disguised as neutrality. Kyle? He was glowing. He walked around the lodge like he had just won an award. He slapped shoulders, told jokes louder than usual, and whenever someone mentioned the presentation, he did that thing where he lowered his voice and said, "Yeah, big lift, but we pulled it off." We. The word he never used unless it benefited him. Around lunch, he passed me in the dining hall, holding a plate stacked like a mountain. He didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just threw a quick, casual line over his shoulder. "By the way, great assist last night. You've got potential." Assist. Potential. Like I was some intern grateful for a crumb of acknowledgement. I didn't respond. I just stared at the back of his jacket as he disappeared into a cluster of managers. A small, sharp voice in the back of my mind whispered, "That wasn't the end of it." And it wasn't. Later that day, during an outdoor team challenge, Kyle made sure to reinforce the narrative. The facilitator asked each group to talk about individual strengths. Before anyone else could speak, he said, "Well, Ethan here is great at fixing mistakes. That's his thing. The guy's a lifesaver when you give him something broken." The others laughed, quick, polite, uncomfortable. I felt something hot crawl up the back of my neck. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. They just sat in my throat like stones. He noticed. I could tell. And maybe that's why he kept going. At dinner, things got worse. We were all sitting at a long wooden table in the lodge restaurant, the kind of place with dim lights and staff who smiled too often. People were tired, relaxed, a little drunk. The kind of atmosphere where lines blur and filters loosen. Halfway through the meal, someone asked about stress on the project. Kyle grinned, swirling his wine. "Oh, Ethan? Yeah, he takes things a little too personally. You know those guys who can't handle pressure unless someone's holding their hand? That's our guy." A few eyes flashed in my direction, some eyebrows raised, a couple chuckles. Someone muttered, "That's harsh," under their breath. Kyle kept going, leaning back like he was telling a campfire story. You should have seen him last quarter. I had to step in and calm him down when he thought the numbers were wrong. Man was spiraling. That never happened. Not even close. But lies told with confidence spread faster than truth told quietly. I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt insulted, deeply, as if I was watching someone graffiti my name in front of a crowd. That night, back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet. I could still hear his voice, still feel the edge in his tone, still feel the way the team absorbed his version of reality, because it was easier than challenging him. I wasn't angry yet. That's the strange part. Anger takes heat. What I felt was cold, a quiet calculation forming in the back of my mind, a shift, a beginning. The next morning at breakfast, one of the analysts, Mara, sat next to me. She picked at her muffin, glanced around, then leaned in. "You know he does that to everyone, right?" she whispered. "Does what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Makes them smaller. Takes their work, then treats them like they're lucky to be in the room. He did it to Lucas before Lucas quit. Did it to Rebecca. Did it to me last year." I looked at her. She looked tired, like she had carried this alone for too long. "Why doesn't anyone say anything?" I asked. She laughed softly, bitterly. "Because he's charming. Because he knows how to make his version sound prettier than the truth. Because HR loves anyone who makes noise look like productivity. And because people are afraid." Afraid? I hated that word. She nudged her plate forward, lowering her voice further. "But I saw what you did last night, fixing the deck while he slept. He showed up this morning bragging like he built that presentation from scratch." She shook her head. "Just know that some of us notice, even if we don't say anything." Her voice faltered for a moment, then steadied. "You deserve better than this." It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like someone pressing on a bruise. But that was just the beginning. Because that afternoon, during the leadership Q&A, with directors sitting in a semicircle and employees allowed to ask questions, Kyle found a new angle. Someone asked about project transparency, about giving junior staff more visibility, a harmless question. But Kyle smiled, folded his arms, and said, "Visibility is earned. Some people think they're being overlooked, when really they're just not ready. You don't promote someone just because they're loud about feeling underappreciated." He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. Everyone else did. Something inside me locked into place then. A small, clean click. That night, back in my room, staring at the ceiling fan, I felt the first honest surge of anger. Not a violent one, not a messy one, a precise one, the kind that sharpens vision instead of blurring it. And then, without warning, came a moment of clarity. I'd spent years saving a man who never wanted saving. Years fixing his mistakes. Years giving him chances he used as weapons. Not anymore. I sat up, grabbed my laptop, and opened a folder I'd never used for more than drafts and scratch work. It was time to start documenting. The day of the main presentation felt different from the moment I opened my eyes. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just heavier, like the air knew something I didn't. Breakfast was quiet. People spoke in low voices, heads bent over their phones, trying to look relaxed. Even Kyle seemed tense, though he hid it behind loud laughs and unnecessary handshakes. But I noticed something off. He wouldn't look me in the eye. That wasn't guilt. Kyle didn't do guilt. It was something else. Something twitchy in the corner of his smile. The kind of look someone gets when they've built a plan they think is brilliant and they can't wait to watch it unfold. Our team was scheduled third. Enough time for nerves to settle. Enough time for someone to create a mess. I carried my laptop the way a parent carries a newborn. Carefully, protectively. The files for the presentation were stored in 3 places, all with timestamps. My own paranoia had become my safety net. At 11:10, 20 minutes before our slot, Kyle said he needed to make a few final touches on the slides. He said it loudly with the tone of a martyr, taking on more burdens than anyone asked of him. The team nodded. He grabbed a company laptop from the tech station and went off into a side room. My skin prickled, not fear, recognition. He was about to do something stupid, and for the first time in months, I wanted him to. I waited 2 minutes, then 3, then 5. Finally, I walked toward the side room. Not fast, not suspicious, just curious. I stopped at the door when I heard the familiar sequence of clicks from the trackpad. Quick, imprecise, panicked. Kyle was editing the deck. No, he was replacing it altogether. A different file name, a different structure, half the data missing. The version he was swapping in wasn't just outdated, it was wrong, dangerous, the kind of file that would make me look incompetent, the kind that would embarrass our entire department. And then I understood the plan. He wanted a savior narrative. If the presentation failed, he'd spin it. I was the one who prepared the numbers. I was the one who assembled the deck. He tried to trust me, and I let the team down. He'd absorb the blame publicly while privately pinning it on me. It was sabotage, not stupidity. He hit save, closed the window, straightened his jacket. For a moment he caught his reflection in the dark computer screen and smiled, not the confident smile he used in groups. This one was smaller, colder, self-satisfied. He walked past me without noticing I was there. That was the moment I stopped breathing normally, not from shock, from certainty. It was time. I didn't go back to the team. I went straight to the director of our department, Laura. She was checking her notes near the back of the hall. When I said I needed to speak to her privately, she looked surprised. Employees rarely approached leadership at retreats unless it was some fluffy compliment or forced corporate bonding. I didn't waste time. I showed her the real deck, the one I built, the timestamps, the metadata, the edited comments with Kyle's name tied to every destructive change, the versions he deleted, the files he tried to overwrite, the chat logs from the night before where he dismissed my concerns. Laura's face didn't move much, but her eyes did. Quick darts across the screen, then back to me, then to the hallway where Kyle was standing with a group of managers, laughing too loudly. "How long has this been happening?" she asked quietly. "Months," I said. "Maybe longer." "You have everything documented?" "Yes." "Why didn't you bring this to HR?" I thought about that for a moment. Then I told the truth. Because HR listens to the person who speaks first and louder. And that's not me. Something in her expression softened. Not sympathy. Something more like understanding. "Forward everything to me?" she said. "Now." I did. She watched her inbox fill with proof. Cold, inconvenient, undeniable proof. She nodded once. Then she stood straighter, adjusted her blazer, and walked toward the front rows where the retreat coordinator and 2 HR reps sat. What happened next wasn't chaos on the surface. It wasn't a loud confrontation. It was the opposite. Polite whispers, exchanged glances, a brief conversation near the stage. But beneath the surface you could feel the tremor. When someone pulled Kyle aside, he looked confused at first, then defensive, then irritated. He tried smiling, tried using that smooth tone he always used to disarm people, but the HR rep didn't smile back. His smile twitched, then fell. He asked a question, too quietly to hear from where I stood. Laura answered it with a single sentence. Kyle's face drained. He looked around like he expected someone to intervene. One of the managers, one of his buddies, someone who would confirm his worldview, that he couldn't possibly be in trouble. No one moved. The retreat coordinator called our team's presentation. Kyle took a step toward the stage. Habit, instinct, entitlement. But a hand gently pressed his shoulder. He wasn't going anywhere. Our team looked around, confused. Mara mouthed, "What's going on?" I shook my head. Not to hide anything, just to say, later. "If you're ready," the coordinator said to me instead. "Ready?" "No." "Prepared?" "Yes." I stepped on stage. In another world, this might have been a triumphant moment. In this one, it was just necessary. I connected my laptop. The real file opened. The first slide glowed bright and clean on the projector screen. There was a moment, a single, delicate moment. when the room fell so quiet that the buzz of the fluorescent lights hummed in my ears. Silence, but not peaceful. The kind of silence that means something's gone wrong. I breathed, then I spoke. I didn't mention Kyle. I didn't reference the sabotage. I didn't call anyone out. I presented the deck with the professionalism I'd always given my job, even when it cost me sleep and weekends and credit. But while I talked, I noticed something strange. The audience wasn't just listening to the data. They were watching me. Really watching. Because somewhere behind them, off to the right side of the hall, Kyle was pacing in small, stiff circles, talking rapidly to HR, gesturing at the laptop he had used, at me, at nothing. His voice wasn't loud, but the tone, shrill, defensive, cracking around the edges, carried. People don't need context to recognize panic. When my presentation ended, the applause wasn't thunderous. It wasn't theatrical, it was steady, respectful, a weight shifting back to center. I stepped off the stage, pulse pounding but in a clean, steady rhythm. I didn't feel victorious. I felt aligned. Kyle looked at me when I passed him. His pupils were too wide. His jaw was clenched. His voice dropped to a hiss. "You think this will stick? You think anyone will believe you over me?" For the first time since I'd known him, I smiled. Not cruelly, just honestly. "They don't have to believe me," I said quietly. "They only have to look." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I walked away. Behind me, conversations tightened. HR pulled him aside again. Laura stepped in with a folder in her hand, the one containing everything I'd sent her. Managers exchanged glances. The air shifted. Kyle wasn't leading anything anymore, and they thought I was gone. I wasn't. The retreat ended the same way storms sometimes do, without thunder, without a dramatic break in the clouds, just a strange stillness that made everyone walk slower and speak softer. Kyle didn't return to the team tables for the closing session. His badge disappeared from the lanyard board near the entrance. His voice, normally impossible to ignore, was absent the rest of the afternoon. Some people assumed he left early because he was busy. Others assumed he didn't feel well. A few looked at me like they already knew, but didn't dare ask. I didn't say anything. Not out of secrecy, because there was nothing left to say. On the bus ride back to the office, the team sat scattered across the seats. Mara slid in next to me halfway through the trip, holding a cup of cold coffee like it was an anchor. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "He's not coming back, is he?" I stared out the window at the passing highway, at the sunlight flickering across the guardrails. "That's not for me to decide," I said, "but you already know." I didn't answer. She nodded like silence was confirmation enough. For the first time since the retreat began, I felt my breaths come evenly. The tension in my shoulders loosened in small, reluctant increments. My heartbeat settled into something steady, something quiet. At the office on Monday morning, the air felt different before I even scanned my badge. People weren't whispering, but they were aware, like the building was holding its breath. At 9:17 a.m., an all-staff email went out from HR. Effective immediately, Kyle Thompson will be transitioning out of his managerial role. Interim leadership will be assigned. 2 hours later, Ethan will serve as acting project lead during this period. I read it once, twice, a third time, slower. Not excitement, not vindication, something calmer. Like someone had untied a rope I didn't realize had been around my chest for years. People stopped by my desk throughout the morning. Some offered congratulations. Some offered relief disguised as congratulations. A few apologized quietly, apologies that weren't about actions but about their silence. I didn't hold it against them, not anymore. Mara came by near noon. She didn't smile. She didn't give a speech. She just placed a sticky note on my desk with one sentence. "Thanks for not letting him rewrite our work forever." It wasn't praise, it was acknowledgement, and that mattered more. Leadership called a meeting that afternoon. Small, private, just the department heads, and a few of us tied directly to the project. The conference room felt bigger than usual, the air-conditioned hum louder. Laura sat at the head of the table, calm, composed, a folder in front of her. She walked us through what would happen: internal audit, project restructure, redistribution of responsibilities. At some point she paused, looked at me and said, "You'll take point for now. Not because of what happened, but because of the work you've already been doing." It wasn't flattery. It wasn't consolation. It was a statement of fact, the kind of sentence that lands softly but holds weight for years. After the meeting, as people filtered out, Laura stopped me with a small gesture. "You handled everything professionally," she said. "Most people would have exploded or retaliated. You didn't." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just nodded. She closed the folder in front of her. "If you ever want the permanent role, you should know. You're already the top candidate." I didn't answer. I didn't have an answer yet. I went back to my desk, and for the first time in a long time, the space felt like it belonged to me. My keyboard, my notepad, my work, mine. In the late afternoon, while reviewing timelines, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. A short text, no explanation, no apologies. "Can we talk?" I deleted it, not out of anger, because nothing good ever starts with those words. An hour later, another message came, this time through an old email we used years ago. I deleted that too. I didn't need closure. I already had it. Around 6, the office lights dimmed automatically, leaving the windows reflecting the city outside. I walked out of the building without rushing for the first time in months. The evening air smelled clean, like rain had passed through without anyone noticing. When I got home, I didn't turn on the TV or music. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll. I just stood in my kitchen, leaning on the counter, listening to the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions. People think satisfaction comes with fireworks, with shouting, with slamming doors, with dramatic exits. But real satisfaction is quiet. It's the moment you realize your life no longer belongs to someone else's ego. It's the feeling of walking through your own doorway, knowing you didn't betray yourself. The next morning I woke up early, brewed strong coffee, and sat by the window while the sun rose. No noise, no dread, no weight. Just a life that finally fit. A week later, someone from HR forwarded me a final update. Kyle had been reassigned temporarily, but removed from all leadership tracks. Performance review pending. Corporate language for the fall already happened. Now comes the paperwork. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. At the end of that week, Mara stopped by my desk again and said, "You look lighter." I thought about it, then nodded. "I'm not carrying 2 people anymore." She laughed under her breath. "He really thought he could outrun the truth." "People like him always do," I said, "until the ground catches up." Later that evening, as I packed my bag, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. Same face, same job, same building, different life. On the way out, someone held the elevator door for me. A simple gesture. But for the first time in what felt like years, I stepped inside without the weight of someone else's shadow following behind me. Peace isn't loud, it's not triumphant, it's not dramatic, it's the absence of chaos. And after everything, that was enough.